Hello, everybody. This is Chris Sevaleja from Scotch. Today, we will be looking at code challenge number 3, and we'll be doing the solution here. So for code challenge number 3, it was just a simple CSS checkbox kind of technique. So we'll go over this, and you'll kind of see how all these cool checkboxes that you see on the web are made with a simple CSS technique and no JavaScript. So let's take a look here. We had code challenge number 3, CSS Lightsaber checkbox. And down here, the challenge was to have it be a checkbox, and as soon as you click, it would load up the lightsaber and fire that up. Let's get started. So we're going to go over here into codepen.io. We'll create a new pen, and then I will close out the CSS and JavaScript. We don't need those right now. And let's use some Emmet to quickly create this. We'll do .lightsaber is the main class, and I hope that's large enough. Let's change to... we'll save this, and then we'll change to presentation view. I think it gets us larger font. Yeah, there we go. So lightsaber, inside of that, we're going to have a label. And then next to that label, we're going to have an input of type equals checkbox. And then, let's see, inside next to that, we'll have a plasma div. And this plasma div is what will show off for the lightsaber, the plasma part. So we're going to have label 4, input type checkbox, and let's make sure it's checked. All right, that's checked to start, and that is going to do it for our HTML. So the point of this isn't really an HTML code challenge. It was more of the CSS side of things. So we'll start with the CSS side. Now, the lightsaber is here. We're going to close this out, and a couple different things I like to do when I start any CSS project. We'll come in here. We'll star, which is the all selector. We're going to say border box. Oh, sorry. We're going to say box sizing is border box. And you'll see all of the CSS resets, all of the CSS frameworks, they're doing this. It helps to make sure that your padding and your margins are all going to calculate correctly. We don't want padding 20 and margin 20 to kind of pad up and increase on each other. So that's a standard thing you'll see. Let's make sure that we can move this checkbox to the middle just so we can, code in a nice area. We're going to say body. And it used to be that if you wanted to center something and vertically center it and horizontally, you would have to say text align center. And then the vertical part was the weird part, right? We would have to say, top 50% and then translate Y negative 50%. We don't have to do that anymore with Flexbox. So we're going to say display flex. And I'm just looking at my notes here. Display flex. And justify content is the way we can align things on the x-axis. And we'll say center. And then also, and notice how it went to the center there, align items is the one we want, is center. And that's going to center things on the y-axis or the cross-axis. So we save that. That didn't seem to take. All right, what's going on here? And that makes sense because our height of our body is only the height of the contents. So it is centered inside of that height, but it's not the full height of our browser width. We want height, well, we'll say min height is 100 vertical height. So it's the full height of the browser. Very nice. And we will say, let's go background at 111 just to get a dark background. Nice. And that v height vertical height is a new unit of measurement in CSS. Very, very helpful. Vertical height and also vertical width you can use. And that's 100% of the vertical height. All right, what else do we got here? Let's start working on our lightsaber itself. So we'll say lightsaber, and we're going to do position relative, and that's it for the lightsaber. Okay, so that's the container there. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to say the label is let's make that the hilt, and let's go back over here. This gray part, that will be the label that we'll style. And then the plasma will be that. And the cool thing about this trick, and you'll usually see it across these types of CSS checkbox techniques, is we're going to hide the checkbox completely. So it's not even going to be in the picture. And the reason we do that is checkboxes are kind of hard to format ourselves. HTML and browsers already add their own styling to it. So we're not even going to deal with resetting those. We're just going to get rid of it. So let's go in here. We're going to say lightsaber. and input type is equal to checkbox. And if I could type correctly, we'll say opacity is 0. And that'll hide that. All right, but before that, I kind of want to show you a technique here of overall. Sorry, let me backtrack real quick. I'll delete that. Now, the technique here we're going to use is HTML allows us to let this label be clickable, and it will automatically change this checkbox so they can correspond to one another. Now, how do we do that? We're going to say ID, or sorry, we're going to say for here is going to be for the Yoda lightsaber. And we'll have a couple different ones. And ID is going to be Yoda. Now, as long as these two match, and let's say I am the label just to demonstrate. And that is text. Well, let's say color white just to get it on this black background. Okay, so the way we do this is if your label has a for attribute that matches an ID of an input, as soon as you click it, it'll check the checkbox. All right? So that's the technique we're going to use. We're going to totally hide the checkbox and then use the label to toggle on or off, which is checked and not checked. Okay, so let's bring this back, and we don't need this text anymore in here. So we'll style out the label next. Lightsaber label. Okay, a couple things we want. Let's set a display of block and a height of 50 pixels and a width of 15 pixels. All right, now let's give it a background. Let's do a gray, so we'll do DDD. All right, now that is the hilt of our lightsaber. It doesn't look like the final product, but it will very soon. So let's get those, actually, let me go back. If I zoom in here, you'll see those dark gray areas at the top there. We're gonna get those next. Do a border, bottom, solid, 4 pixels, gray. And we'll do border top, the same, solid, 4 pixels, gray. Okay, now we have those. Now the last thing we need to do is give it a little border radius so it gets rounded, 5 pixels. Nice. Now we have our lightsaber. And at the very end, we're going to keep it like this for now. But at the end, let's do a gradient on there so it gives it a little more depth. But for now, we'll leave this here. We'll keep our code pretty clean here. Let's see, what else do I need to do? I think that's it for the label. Yeah, all right. Let's move on to the actual plasma part. So we'll say lightsaber, plasma. And notice I'm nesting these just to be sure that if we have plasma class anywhere else, this will only apply to plasma if it is a child of the lightsaber class. We'll go with border radius, 12 pixels, and 0, 0. So that's 12 pixels top and bottom, or sorry, top left and top right, and then nothing on the bottom. And let's give this a background of red just to test. And I know Yoda's green. We should actually change that to green. But we need a height of 50 pixels and a width of 10 pixels. Notice how it's kind of off to the bottom here. Let's position things absolutely. And I know there's a couple different ways we can do this. We could probably move this to the top up here like this. But we're going to do things absolutely, and I'll show you why in a second. It's because we want to use the sibling CSS selector when we tag this checkbox and we find the sibling plasma. Okay, so we're going to say position is absolute here. And let's go with bottom is 55 pixels. So it's going to go from the bottom. Let me get a semicolon in there, and then it'll go up 55 pixels. Good. Let's see. We want to make sure that the width is 10 pixels. Did I already do that? I did. Cool. And let's do position absolute, bottom, and then let's center it a little bit. So we'll say left is 2 pixels. We'll move it over. Okay. Maybe 3 pixels. Cool. And then bottom 58 pixels. 60. 2. 65. Almost there. All right, so around 64. You can play around with yours. But the height is 50 pixels. And why is that not taking? 10 pixels. Height is 50 pixels. We'll compute that. 1050. Is that 50 pixels? I think that is. That's the same height as the hilt. All right, that's my mistake. Let's do a height of 250 pixels. Way taller. Very nice. And the final thing, let's go up to the body and add a padding to the top of this. Top, let's say 150 pixels. Just a little spacing. Very nice. Notice Flexbox did put it in the center, but since this is positioned absolutely, it didn't, it kind of went above that and was not in the flow of things anymore since it's positioned absolute. So it didn't really get factored into the height there. And one thing we can do that's kind of a cool trick in CSS is a filter of blur 10 pixels. 10's a little high. That's a lot high. 1 pixel. Okay, that'll do it. And the last part of that is we will need to add a gradient towards the end of this. And let's make this green because it is Yoda's lightsaber. And that just makes sense. Where is that red I said? Okay, green there. Okay, that'll do the job for now. Next up, let's see. All right, let's use the CSS. And this is kind of the cool part of the challenge here. Let's use CSS to toggle this open and closed. So what we could do sometimes, you could see a lot of people maybe using JavaScript and saying, okay, when this checkbox is checked, then add a class that says lightsaber on or lightsaber open. Well, we could do that. We could also use CSS though and just totally forego the JavaScript side of things. So let's try that. We're going to say, as soon as this checkbox is checked, then Plasma has a height of 250 pixels. But by default, the height is 0. There we go. So it's not there. And then let's see how we can use the checked pseudo class to see if this lightsaber input box is checked. So we'll say .lightsaber input type is checkbox. And you could have added the class to this so you could avoid writing all this out. I just did that anyway. Colon checked. And that's how we see if it is checked or not. And CSS can check for that HTML attribute. And we're going to say, hey, grab your sibling and your sibling called Plasma, set that height to 250 pixels when you're checked. All right, very nice. So now if we check this, it'll close, and if we check this, it'll open. And that'll be our checkbox also getting checked and unchecked by us clicking the label, which is the hilt of the lightsaber. Pretty cool stuff there, I think. All right, the last thing, well, not the last thing, there's a couple more things, but this on and off toggle isn't so smooth. We can add a transition to this to make it kind of open and close how you would expect a lightsaber to open and close. We're going to say transition 0.3 seconds, and let's do the height. So as soon as we click this, it'll open and close with a nice transition there. Pretty cool stuff. And let's see, the last, sorry, I keep saying the last thing, but label, we'll say cursor is a pointer, because as I hover this, I want to be able to show our users that we can click that. So we'll click that. Nice. Open and close. Very nice there. All right. What else do we have? Let's add in some CSS for our hilt so we can have a gradient there, and the Yoda lightsaber to have a gradient there as well. So I'm going to open up CodePen again. And I have this in one of my old CodePens when I was testing how to make this. So we'll go here. And I'll leave a link to this in the comments. You can grab the CSS here. But notice this is the background image of the entire body. I kind of wanted to make that whole thing fancy there. You see there's a little bit of a background there. And that's an SVG background. But if we scroll down, lightsaber label, this is the background gradient we want here. So I'll copy that, and I'll leave these in the description below as well. So we'll go over here. Where's that label at? We'll close that. Label. Background. And now there's a little bit of a gradient there. It goes from 0, 50%, 51%, and 100%. And these are just varying grays. And then next, one thing I like to do is add some CSS classes, to have this be a Yoda lightsaber. And dash dash, if you're not familiar with BEM, block element modifier CSS naming, it's a kind of a cool technique where you can say, okay, dash dash means it's a modified version of the parent, and underscore is a child of the parent. And this is a way to kind of look through your CSS and see what's a modified version or what's a child. So we'll say dash dash Yoda, and then we'll come down here. We don't want that green to be default anymore. We'll just make the background is white, FFF. So white by default. And I think those are the, what are they? Star Wars Knights, the Jedi Knights. I know I'm getting that wrong. But the next thing we need is we're going to say lightsaber dash dash Yoda, and the plasma for Yoda will be a certain color. I'll go grab this CSS here, and we'll say Yoda plasma. And I'm going to actually copy Yoda plasma, Vader plasma, Windu plasma, and copy all these three. And again, I'll throw these in the description and paste these in. Very nice. And let me zoom out a little bit. So notice we are able to theme our lightsaber based on who it belongs to. And all we have to do is add a class each time. So we're not affecting the main plasma. We're just adding a class, and then that changes the plasma for the color. So if we go up here, we'll copy this, enter, enter. Those might be a little close, yep. But if we do Vader and one for Mace Windu, they automatically change their colors. And if we go CSS, let's do lightsaber all the way at the top, and we'll say margin right is 30 pixels. Nice. Okay. And one thing that's bothering me, I think it's a little off center. So we'll say 2 pixels here. 2.5? That's a little weird, huh? Okay, that's a little better from my perspective than bottom 63 pixels. Okay, that should be good enough. So as we open and close these, notice we're clicking the second one, but it's opening the Yoda CSS lightsaber, and that's because we have for Yoda, and the ID for that is Yoda. So we'll change this to Vader, and we'll change this to Windu. Save, click, and all three of them open as they should. Very nice. Now let me show you something really cool. We'll add JavaScript, and this was the bonus part of the CSS challenge. We're going to add JavaScript and play the audio sound, and I'm not sure actually if my audio sound will play because I'm recording through a tool called OBS Studio, but you should be able to hear it on your end. We're going to say, and we'll do this vanilla JavaScript, no jQuery needed, const lightsabers is equal to document.query selector all, and we'll say lightsaber. And we're going to look for the input of type is equal to checkbox. Okay, so we're going to grab all of these. We're going to grab all three lightsabers. And then we're going to listen for the click. So we're going to say lightsabers. And if you're doing document query selector all, it returns an array of all the elements that you have. And in this case, we have 3 of them. So we want to do a for each on these. And if you aren't familiar with these, check out our Getting Started with JavaScript course. We go in depth on just basic vanilla JavaScript stuff and using it for web development. But here we have saber.add event listener. We want to listen for the change event. And then play whoosh sound is our function that we're going to call. And down here, we'll create a play whoosh function. And you might be familiar with actually putting the function in here. I personally like to move the function out of the callback right here. So I'll name a function. And the reason I do this is for readability. So if we come back to this file, maybe 3 months down the road, we go saber add event listener. So, okay, on change, we're going to play the whoosh sound. And that is far more readable than having an inline function there. So we'll say function play whoosh. And I'll take the event out of here. The way we're going to do this is we're going to create an audio element, which is the audio element right here. We're going to attach a source to it. And then we're going to use the audio's built-in play function. So let's try this out. So we'll say const new audio is equal to document.create element, and it's going to be an audio element. And then we'll say new audio.source is equal to, And I have one saved up on the Scotch servers, HTTPS, I believe. It'll be scotch.io/audio/lightsaber.wave. And now we can say new audio.play. All right, let's give this a shot. There we go. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's playing on my end. So hopefully it plays on your end. All right. And that's how we can add. It's a little loud on this end, but that's how we add lightsaber noises to our lightsabers. All right. That's the entire code challenge, code solution. I hope you had fun with that, and we'll see you in next week's code challenge. Thanks for watching.